look, like I said, last thing, when you pass away, nobody cares about what car you drove. Nobody cares about, what jersey you got on your wall or none of that. Nobody cares about that. When you pass away, it's about relationships and the impact that you left on other people, whether that be positive or negative.
First off, man, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this, man. My brother from another mother. Like, hey, I think the kids now they say twin, man. What's up, twin? How you feeling today?
Hey, good morning, man. Glad to be a part of it, man. Well, look, I feel like you're my twin. I've known you since we were literally little kids, man. But hey, twin over here got to catch up with twin over there's beard, man. So once I catch up officially, which I probably won't,
Hey,
we'll be super official.
hey, I just caught up with you on the ball, and what I'm
Look,
saying,
oh, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt.
how's it going, bro?
Man, it's going well. It's going well, man. I was when you asked me to be to join and share some words and things like that, man. I was very ecstatic about it. It officially let me know that I'm getting old now. That people care about my professional journey, things of that nature. So it felt good, man. Finally
Yeah,
making it somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
man. So, I mean, with that being said, man, can you kind of tell us like what do you actually do?
Yes, I'm a senior SQA. I do software testing. So I test, well, technically it's not limited to that, but essentially whenever if you have an IT department at your company, anytime they roll out a product, whether it be an app or some sort of new payment system, generally, you have developers that create it, right? But you also have QA engineers or quality assurance professionals that actually test the code, test the software to make sure, and hardware to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do per the requirements given to them by the stakeholders or the business or people of that nature. So I am that last line of defense to check to make sure the product is fit for production or fit for use. So I do software testing.
Yeah, man. Hey, man, that sounds really cool, man. I am curious, like, how did you get into that?
So that's a great question. I actually Scooby Doo my way into it. Initially, so I went to college initially. I wasn't going to college. You actually inspired me to go to college. I was going to try that blue collar life, work a couple jobs to try to make it. And, I thought about it. I was like, maybe not that. So I decided I was going to go to the Marines. And because, quote unquote, mentor at that time at a co op that I was working in high school, this guy named Ed was a former Marine. And he had told me all the time, he said, man, you'd be a great Marine. You should join the Marines and give you the discipline that you're looking for. So I was like, okay, cool. So, I did the recruiter thing. Long story short, graduation day, high school, graduated, sat in the parking lot. The recruiter called me and I said, hey, man, I'm going to college, man. Don't call me no more. So, I probably was a little disrespectful, but I went to college initially to try to be a stockbroker. I thought about, money and things like that. And, I had that, dream of having that lifestyle penthouse in New York and things like that. And
Yeah.
life didn't quite work like that. I didn't do very well at micro and macroeconomics. So my college, I realized I was flunking those classes even while trying to cheat. And I realized like, hey, that's not a good sign.
Wait, man, hold on. So you were trying to cheat, but you were still flunking. How does that work, man?
Dude, hey, that was God, bro. I studied my tail off, and essentially a lot of times, when I study and put my mind to something, I'm usually pretty successful at it. So I studied and studied, and for some reason on test day, smart computer had a piece of paper slid into the back of the little calculator, and with all the formulas and things. And for some reason on test day, my mind just got cloudy. That's like I could not recall the information I had studied, and it wasn't even anxiety because I was like one of the last two or three people to turn my test in, and I flunked and I failed poorly.
Yeah.
And I realized like, hey man, this is not for me. So anyway, I decided to switch my major to a military major, which was organizational leadership at Auburn University, Montgomery. And I just excelled because the classes spoke to who I was and my personality, my characteristics. So I thrived in that. Got into IT. Just by networking, knew the human resources manager at the company I was working with at the time. He and I had a pretty good rapport, and he said, "Hey, man, why don't you try this?" Because originally I was in customer service as an analyst,
Mm,
and it's funny because those type of things build you to where you're going,
mm.
and you don't realize that at the time. You just think you're wasting your time, and like, man, I hate this. but it's always something to glean from where you are. Everywhere, every step that you take is a stepping stone to get you where you're supposed to be. So I got into IT, sent him a paragraph, didn't even have a resume. He
Mm,
slid me in as a favor. And
mm.
the rest is history, man. I just kind of I took to it. It was bumpy at first, and then I realized I'm like, okay, I'm kind of good at this. Once somebody kind of broke down the basics of what it was, I felt like I could thrive, and really be successful at that. So God bless, I did, and I'm here now, man.
And you're saying so when you got started, you were doing customer service. Was that like help desk or what type of customer service was it?
Was it will not exactly help desk, although it's funny now. I'm a QA manager because I'm a manager of me. I'm the only QA resource on for the project that I'm working on currently. Um, but so I'm the manager and the resource, but I actually perform as help desk as well, and I'll explain that a little later on. But essentially, at that time, I was customers. It was just customer service mainly. I was an analyst. I had to record payment information in the computer so to set people up on automatic pay for their insurance bills. It was an insurance company. And agents and customers and CSRs or customer service representatives used to call me to help to have me explain their billing. Like, okay, people on fixed incomes would say, okay, my insurance is $5 more than it was last term, per month, why? And I would have to dig in and research as to why and say, okay, you made a change. You moved from this location, rates change, et cetera, et cetera. It's funny because that is kind of QA.
Mm,
Software testing is digging into the code a little bit and trying to figure out where the gaps, where the bugs, defects are, in that code. So it was preparing me for what I was ultimately going to do. Had no idea that I would do this,
yeah.
but those kind of steps in dealing with people, working in projects, front facing things like that, it ended up being very beneficial to me.
What would you say is the most challenging part about what you do?
Honestly, that's a good question. I think working on any project, you have to deal with personalities. I think challenging is the work life balance. If you're, a lot of times QA is a thankless position. It's very critical to your projects. However, QA gets all the blame because we're supposed to find the issues before they get to the
Mm,
stakeholders or the customer.
mm,
So I always used to tell my team when I worked on projects, I said, look, QA is about juggling glass balls, right? You're not going to find every defect or every bug, but you have to find the big ones. Now you can if you have two big glass bulbs here and you have a small one, you gotta, and if it's a time constraint, you prefer to let the smaller ball drop because it's not critical. It's not a showstopper. It's not going to stop your project. You can kind of still fix that and work around that. But the big glass balls, that's what gets you fired. Now,
yeah.
if you catch those big things, that's what gets you promotions. But if you miss them, you definitely get fired. Because a lot of companies now with QA, it's not that many. QA is semi-diverse, but mainly if you work in these industries, at least from my experience, a lot of the QA professionals are from India. A lot of companies contract and outsource that work because they work longer hours and they do it for uh, a price cut on the rate. Versus hiring somebody, an American per se, in America, working on an American project, they may charge more from a salary perspective versus someone, if you outsource it to a company, they'll get you two or three resources for the one that you would have paid here in America. They work a little cheaper. They're willing to do that grunt work for less money. And they usually get the projects like Cognizant, Signity. I work, so for me, it's a balance of, okay, I know what I'm worth, but I want to get this gig too. So how can I leverage and let these two things meet so it can propel me to where, I'm going and what I'm trying to get to. Especially
How,
if you're contracting with.
got you. How hard is it to do what you do? Like for somebody watching this and they're like, man, that sounds interesting. It sounds like something I would want to do. Like how competitive is it to do that job?
It used to be, so full disclosure, I've been working white collar since I was 19. 2006, I got into the corporate world.
Yeah,
I just realized I'm like, man, it's almost been 20 years for me.
yeah.
Doing this. I've been doing QA for in that time, I've probably been I don't know, almost 20 years. I've been doing QA for probably about 15 of those years. I've been doing it for a while. So to answer your question directly, it's a little more challenging now than it used to be. Because now, since technology changes, anybody that works in IT will tell you you have to stay current with the technology. Now everybody wants developers and coders. So like with QA, so specifically, somebody somebody familiar with QA might have said, well, are you a manual tester or are you an automation tester? Or do you?
Right.
I was a manual tester by trade. I got
Mm,
in on the manual side of things because I started out as a hybrid business analyst. So I would capture requirements. And then at the time, the company was cheap on the resources. So I'd have to gather the requirements and also test the requirements, which it was beneficial to me because I understood the requirements intimately to know what the code was and was not supposed to do. And I was able to find those gaps and those bugs in that through the static analysis and things like that. But now it's evolved. So now companies want you to be able to not only test, but actually, automate scripts. That way they could, hey, you write these test scripts, the computer will run through these simulations and find the bugs automatically for you in some areas. But you still need the human element of that because it's pre-programmed. You got to have somebody to program, but you got to have, there are edge cases and nuances that the computer won't find or that your script won't find. And of
right.
course, you got to go back in and update your scripts. So it's it's not it's not it's not easy, but it's not hard either. If that's something that your mind is geared towards, if you're trying to get into IT coding and things like that,
Hmm.
it's not that difficult. For me, I got my degree in organizational leadership, trying to be a stockbroker, ended up not using my degree at all,
Right.
doing SQA. So I got certified. I took my CTFL certification. They have a foundation level, uh, an advanced level, and an expert level. Well, I wanted to get into management, QA management, and I thought you had to have a advanced level cert to get that, to do that, because you have to be at the time you had to have two recommendations and things like that. That was not necessarily required for me. I just kind of put in the stripes, put in my stripes, working on difficult projects. So I put a lot of times. I've been on a lot of death marches on some of these projects doing this, and hence me being bald. I've been under the gun a lot with stress and gray hairs and stuff like that. It's not difficult, but you got to be willing to put in the work.
Yeah, got you. So at a bare minimum, what would you say someone would need before they would even be considered a reasonable candidate to break into your industry? Like,
Oh, that's a good question. Well, essentially, to do QA, you need to have an inquisitive eye, uh,
okay.
and what I mean by that is the whole point. Your testing is making sure that it works the way it's supposed to, and how can I break this? And that's where it's supposed to be, quote unquote, fun. It's okay. The system is supposed to, if it's supposed to bend left, how can I make it bend right?
Mm,
Because somebody out there is going to try. You're trying to find the gaps, you're trying to find the edge cases, you're trying to find those little. It's just being it's just like solving a puzzle. It's like, okay, I know how this works. If I put the puzzle the right way, I know what it's supposed to do. But I see these shapes on these pieces. Well, okay, this, even though this is not supposed to go together, this piece fits this shape. What
right,
does my picture look like after that if I put these two pieces together? That's
right,
QA, is trying to, you rather find the issues with your product internally than release a product and somebody like, hey, I found a back door into this thing. Oh, this is going to be awesome. Like,
right.
it's for safety, security reasons, different types of testing doing
No,
it.
that makes a lot of sense, man. And the reason
Mhm,
why I mainly ask you that is because, like, I don't have my degree, but
mhm.
I do have military experience, and I've
Right.
heard different things like, oh, you could break into tech, you don't need a degree. I mean, you have your degree, but I'm just kind of curious to know. I mean, if I'm understanding you correctly, it sounds like the biggest thing is you have to have the right mindset, and you have to be able to explain that effectively, more or less than whether or not you have a degree. But is that a prereq,
That's
would
true.
you say?
Yeah. So really, honestly, companies require a degree. They used to require a degree as a way to separate people, right? It
Mm,
was like, okay, we have all these applicants, distinguishing factors, those with a degree versus not. Nowadays, so
mhm,
many people have a degree. A degree just, of course, as many people have heard, a degree just confirms that you can start and finish something difficult, right? It's just, so if you're a type of person, QA is not going to be for you if you can't sit down long stretches of time and research, analyze to complete. I've sat down on projects, and it's not healthy. I'm not promoting that, but I've sat down for 5 straight hours looking at the same requirements, reworking the same code. I used to test for a nonprofit insurance company here in the state of Texas, um, um, on payment systems. So at the time, the company was trying to accept credit card payments. So part of my job, I was working two projects at the same time. I was the only resource. We had a team, but we had so many projects at the time. We were stretched. So I had to work two different projects simultaneously. So that required me to sit long, pieces of time, work late hours. So you don't necessarily need a degree. However, you definitely probably would, to get into QA and really make the money that you want to make, you definitely want to be certified, have a certification. That way you understand, because a lot of times in interviews, people want to hear buzzwords, to know that you know what you're talking about. Because your resume can look good.
Right.
And the fact that you got an initial call on your interview means that, okay, we think you could fit. Now we're trying to see if the person matches the paper, i.e., what is your personality? Does your personality
Right.
fit our culture? Do y'all line up? So essentially,
Right.
you want at least a certification, but behind that, you want the job experience. The degree just kind of gets your foot in the door to say, okay, this person can complete a difficult task in a
Right.
timely manner. That's kind of why you would need it, just for that. But the certifications can essentially do the same thing. So it's really who you know. If you know somebody that can kind of get you in the door, if that's something that you're trying to do, that makes a big difference as well.
Yeah,
If you don't
man.
have the paperwork behind it.
Yeah, man. It's not just all one thing. It's really a combination of all the things, really.
Yeah.
So, because a resume essentially is just like your marketing. And if you get somebody to look at it, they're like, oh, I like this marketing. Let me see if I like the product. You're the product. So you still got to sell
You have to
yourself.
sell yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
man. So, man, we could really go deep, man. I feel like we got pretty good information with this. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about on this conversation?
I do. So I will be remiss if I didn't do this. Three scriptures I have to give, and I'll
Okay.
explain why afterwards. The first scripture, Romans chapter 10, verse 9, Romans chapter 10, verse 10, and Acts 4 and 12. Acts chapter 4, verse 12. I say that because a lot of people, this is kind of a segue, but I would give people advice of, don't compare your career journey to anyone else's. Your career journey is your own. A lot of time people feel like the common phrase that you hear a lot of times is Colonel Sanders started KFC in his 60s.
Right.
That's a true statement. Success has no time, but it takes the grace of God to make you successful. Hard work gets you a good chunk, right? But
Hmm.
it's a lot of people working hard that haven't been able to break through and they can't figure out why. Well, a lot of times
Mhm.
God just hasn't blessed that situation for you. That's where prayer and your spiritual life comes into play. It's been very profound for me. I've worked a lot of jobs, worked a lot of projects. Even before the age of 20, I had worked at telemarketing, the zoo, a shoe store, a rental company. I did all kind of stuff, restaurants. Post 20, working in the corporate world, I realized, I'm like, okay. And at the time, I didn't take my job very seriously because I felt I was young and I was like, hey, you know what? I can find another one. You really want to find a place that matches your personality and where you have peace. My job now, I love it. I test drones for a living. I'm actually working on some goggles now. I'm testing something like that. I love my job. I really do. But it took a long time for me to get there. I'll turn 38 this year. I'm 37, and it took me 36 years to find a place where I felt I wanted to be fun, challenging, rewarding, and a place that I felt gratified. Like if I didn't make another dollar, if I didn't work anything else for the rest of my life, I could do this.
That's
That took a
dope,
long
man.
time. Yeah,
That's dope.
I wouldn't want to do anything else. I love it. I love and enjoy what I do. So, and I do hardware testing and software testing. QA is a hardware version. You can do quality assurance on an assembly line at a car plant,
Mm,
because you have to make sure the car is ready to put on the road, or else the company faces lawsuits. It's a critical job. So
right.
QA is not just computers. QA is hardware. You can do that at a factory. You can do that on a cell phone. You can do that in any facet of life. Food inspection. So quality is important. So it's not just computers. So, but yeah, I said that to say, but it took a lot of prayer, and me developing a better relationship with God for myself, in order to understand where God was trying to lead me. Because a lot of times you lose track of your purpose because you're so driven by money. And the whole point of you being here is to serve other people, not just yourself. God blesses you so that you don't have to worry about yourself while you're serving others. It's about serving other people. So if you're doing things money driven, you can make money, but you're not gonna get the fulfillment that you would think earning that income would bring. I've with QA. The salaries kind of range. I know this is maybe a question some people may, well, how much can you make on that?
Yeah.
Entry level QA is depending on what the state and the project. Entry level QA starts at roughly about 60 grand on a smaller project. If you got no experience, you're just trying to get in there, they'll give you about 60K. But if you're experienced and you've been doing this for a while,
Mm,
you make well into the six figures. It's you make a lot of money doing that. The more automation you know, the more development that you know, the bigger your income. So I've worked with people and currently work with people that make a lot of money, a whole lot of money doing that. So it can be very rewarding, but they just enjoy it, man. They don't the people who the most successful a lot of times don't care about the money. And it's crazy because they making the most money, but they don't care about it. They like, man,
yeah.
because when you're passionate about something and you pouring your all into it, other people notice.
Yeah, man.
So if you're money driven, you're not going to get the fulfillment and success that you think you would versus serving other people. It's about service. So
Yeah.
that's
It's
what's
only, I
about.
mean, you can make so much money, then it's gonna get to a certain point where it's like, okay, what else do I want? Eventually, you're gonna get tired of buying stuff. Like it's not gonna be enough
Yeah,
to satisfy your spirit. So I agree with that
100%.
wholeheartedly, man. So
Yeah, 100%, bro. Hey, look, like I said, last thing, when you pass away, nobody cares about what car you drove. Nobody cares about what jersey you got on your wall or none of that. Nobody cares about that. When you pass away, it's about relationships and the impact that you left on other people, whether that be positive or negative. I've been to funerals where the impact was very negative. It was comical, but it was sad at the same time. Um, you know, you want to. It's about how you touch other people, and some people you impact and influence without even knowing that. Once you start putting those things into perspective, your family, prioritizing relationships, and really trying to be, helpful to people and leave something positive on people, then you realize what type of person you really are. So yeah, it's cool to be career driven. A lot of it's mainly younger people that generally do that. As you get older, I would imagine that some wisdom kind of starts to kind of sprinkle on you a little bit, and you start realizing like, hey man, I'm working this making money, but I'm neglecting my family, and things like that. So yeah, just kind of keep that in perspective. It's
yeah,
about service, it's about relationships. So
I appreciate you doing like giving all of your knowledge, man, sharing all of your experience. I want to end on this, man. Since you
I
so
see it.
I got you to, I need you to do this. I'm gonna edit it later. Don't even worry about this part. All right.
Okay. Okay.
I need you, man, we grew up like, man, we played basketball every day, man.
We did.
Sun up to sundown. If it was raining, we'd probably still go out there, man. Like, so we talk about this a lot, man. Just to share another side outside of the professional and the spiritual side. Let's talk about this. Rank these
Okay.
small forwards.
For me personally, so this is my personal list, and I can give reasons why afterwards if you need me to. But I say the best small forward of all time is the GOAT Junior, LeBron James. Michael Jordan is the GOAT, but LeBron James is GOAT Junior. And no disrespect to Kobe, Kobe's the man, but LeBron just passed 40,000 points. He'd be number one on my list. Number two for me will be the great Larry Bird. That'd be number two on my list. Number three on my list would have to be Dr. J, Julius Irving, just because of his impact on the game and how many people he inspired, like your Michael Jordans and things like that. So Dr. J would be number three. Number four for me would be, you know what? That's a tough one. Scotty did a lot. Scotty won a lot of championships. Scotty's greatness sometimes is limited. However, I will say, you know what? Nah, Scottie Pippen, bro. Scottie Pippen, number four. I got to go with Scottie Pippen. Six championships. Was a great teammate and served as the Robin to Michael Jordan's Batman with grace. Although in his latter years he felt a little disgruntled because he wasn't getting the credit he deserved, and everybody can relate to that to some degree. And of course, Kawhi Leonard is five. That's a tough five, but the fact that he even made this list is great. Because there's a
Okay.
lot of small forwards that play that won't make the list. But Kawhi winning three championships. Is big time, but that championship in Toronto, technically he would not have won had KD and Clay not gotten hurt. To be honest with
That's
you, I
true.
watched every game of that.
That's true.
That'd have been
I think
debatable.
that's gonna kind of, I mean, you had to have been there, but when people look back, they're gonna forget that was this like reality. So I mean, still, he
Um,
brought them a ring. They ain't gonna win no more in
no,
Toronto.
yeah, well, be happy with the ones you got. But no, it was a veteran team. He did make a difference. He pushed them over the edge because I know
Yeah.
DeMar DeRozan probably feels like he could have. You would not have,
No,
but
no, absolutely not.
no, he wouldn't have.
Absolutely not, man.
So, LeBron was in his ways, but we never know. LeBron was cleaning them guys up in the East for a while, but Kawhi came at the right time. He had the right mentality for
Right
it.
place, right time. Just perfect storm for him, man. He got him
Perfect storm, bro.
helped his legacy, you know.
Oh,
Season
for
ain't doing
sure.
nothing in the Clippers. Like,
Yeah, and he won't, and he won't. So they ain't winning the championship this year.
yeah.
So
All right, bro.
so yeah.
Well, I appreciate this interview, man. You dropped a lot of gems in this, man. I can't wait to upload it and let people see it, man.